Welcome everyone. I appreciate everyone's attendance. It's really exciting to see everyone here in the same place. So for this next business panel, as Marissa mentioned, our topic title is Thriving During Adversity. We have some brilliant and experienced panelists here today, and their insight on this topic is going to be really interesting to hear. We're going to learn about how they're overcoming unprecedented obstacles that they've faced over the past few months and how they're finding ways to thrive. Megan Pitas, CPA, will moderate the panel, introduce our panelists, and ask questions to the panelists. Megan joined the OSI team in September and has extensive background in consulting, best practices, executive consulting, and auditing. Megan, over to you.
Thank you, Jen. I'm very excited to introduce our panelists that have graciously joined us today. First, we have Nick Barish, the controller of Artisan Floors. Artisan Floors specializes in flooring for multifamily properties. Nick began his career in the United States Navy as a logistics specialist. He was deployed to Japan, Iraq, Afghanistan, Liberia, and Spain, supporting various missions, including implementing new supply chain efficiency programs across the regiment. After his military service, Nick completed a degree in accounting from the University of Southern Mississippi in Long Beach. Nick joined the team at Artisan Floors in 2016, and now he uses his passion for process automation and simplification to continually improve operations and IT solutions for Artisan. Next, we have Rusty Jahangir, who is the founder and CEO of Blue Robotics. Blue Robotics designs, manufactures, and sells components and systems for marine robotics. In 2014, Rusty had the idea to send his surfboard solar-powered and remotely controlled from Los Angeles to Hawaii. While researching this project, he realized the limiting component was the thruster, as he needed something that could resist saltwater, operate continuously, and be efficient for months on end. At the time, there was no affordable and dependable solution, so this was the catalyst for starting Blue Robotics. And finally, we have Greg Stock, who is one of the founders of Damage Control and Strymon guitar pedals. Greg was a lifelong musician who put his degree in electrical engineering to good work when he created his own guitar pedal. It only took one night of trying out the pedal before a fellow founder called Greg to say he was all in, and the Damage Control team was formed. Greg's passion for the work combined with a fascination for IT was the foundation for many pedals that broke new ground in the industry. And as you have heard, our theme for today is resiliency, and our topic today is thriving during adversity. Nearly every industry has faced unprecedented challenges during the last 8 months due to the pandemic. From supply chain and logistics issues to material shortages, I, for one, will not be forgetting the shortages of disinfecting wipes or toilet paper anytime soon. Each of our panelists has been successfully navigating this crazy year, so let's get right into it and hear from them. This first question is for Greg. Supply from China has dwindled since March and April of this year. What types of supplies does your business rely on, and what strategies have you set up to deal with this?
First audio check, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So what we do is we build our products here in Southern California, but we consign the materials, meaning that we provide all the materials to the contract manufacturer. And our materials are a combination of parts that we source in China and parts that we source in the US. The parts that we get in China are mostly custom or not readily available, and also are not easily replaceable. So we considered, switching suppliers, but ultimately never, took any action on it, just for the amount of time it would take to bring somebody else up. For us, the timing is interesting in that, every year Chinese New Year holiday blows a hole in your procurement, and you have to plan to kind of go dark for about a month or so. So I don't know if everybody remembers the timing, but basically the Chinese government told all the workers, well, stay home for Chinese New Year. Don't come back until we get this kind of under control. So we had already planned to some extent, for this shutdown, and we were able to stay in contact with our suppliers and, the, worked with them to try to see when they thought they could get production back up and running, and ultimately that was probably one of the easier parts of all the challenges that we felt, in that they got back probably about a month or so after we expected, but it was within our window, a buffer that we had already built up for the anticipated shutdown. And I think probably if I could have a business strategy, it's that at some level you wind up talking to your business partners, and you have, besides your business relationship, a personal relationship, and that if those relationships are strong and you need a favor, it certainly doesn't hurt if you have a good relationship, and that you haven't been beating them up all year previously, that when you need them to help you out, that they're willing to do so. So I think yeah, good communication, good relationships, and that's kind of what got us through it. Other challenges with basically U.S. suppliers, because I think some of the U.S. suppliers still get their parts in China, and they've got their own issues indirectly. That we've had more of a challenge with our U.S. semiconductor suppliers than with the Chinese parts.
That's really interesting, and how lucky that you're already planning for a shutdown.
Well, yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Greg.
Sure.
And our next question is for Nick. Raw materials such as lumber have exhausted their yearly quota as early as May of this year. How has this challenge impacted your operations?
Yeah, so I guess as well, my mic's working, I hope.
Yes, it is.
All right. Yeah, so in general, the building sector is taking kind of a beating this year. We focus in multifamily, and typically trends kind of reverse. When building goes down, multifamily kind of goes up, vice versa. But this year we kind of expected everyone to take a bit of a hit, and that didn't happen quite as expected. Building and remodeling kind of picked up quite a bit in the first and second quarter, higher than anticipated. So we saw a lot of material, particularly a lot of DIY type stuff, taking stuff off the shelves as people were staying home. And so we equally, as Greg was talking about, mitigate a lot of that with overseas supply chains, and we've dealt with this in the past and to some extent. And so we try to keep a U.S. supplier in hand, as well as an overseas supplier that can kind of buffer some of the issues. But what we saw this year, as Greg was talking about, is after the Chinese New Year, they had a shutdown. And typically with the Chinese New Year, we have a problem with workers coming back to the manufacturer plants as it is. So a lot of that supply and resource stopped the production of raw materials. So we particularly source wood molding from China. We bring in about 1 million linear feet of this molding every year. And so that wasn't getting produced throughout the time. And so ways that we look around that are additional suppliers in other countries. And so our partners in China started looking in Vietnam and a few other places. And so we were able to source that material, same material, through other Asian Pacific countries. And so that was a big helping hand in what we were trying to do. But as demand kind of pinted up in the second quarter, it kind of released in the end of the second, third quarter, and everything kind of skyrocketed again. We're starting to see a bottleneck in the supply of PVC, particularly virgin material that makes a lot of the resilient flooring that is very popular in our industry right now. And as Christmas is coming up, a lot of plastics and things like that are required for all the toys and different things that are bought. So now we're having to kind of forecast out in front of Chinese New Year even further than we typically do, and go ahead and get those orders placed now so that we can kind of tie up those raw materials before everybody kind of depletes what raw materials are left in stock right now.
That's so interesting. I never would have thought of toys and plastics having an impact on the flooring industry.
Yep.
It's crazy, the interconnectedness of everything. Thanks, Nick. Our next question is for Rusty. So new, varying, and ever-changing state mandates exist today for maintaining a safe work environment for employees. How have you adapted your manufacturing floor to accommodate and comply with these new regulations?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. Can you hear everything fine?
Yep. Thanks, Rusty.
All right, great. So we basically shut down our facility for a week back in March. We're in Southern California, and then we realized we were in some of the essential business categories, and we slowly reopened operations. We did so very gradually, but now we're back to a point where all of our we still have like our sales and marketing team offsite, but all of our manufacturing warehouse team are on site every day. We've added a bunch of safety protocols in order to make sure they're safe. Obviously, we have people wearing masks in the facility. We've got sanitizer at each station, and we require everybody to sanitize their tools and work area each time they sit down. We've been keeping all of our doors open and turning on our ventilation system to try to, draw the air out and have fresh air in there all the time. We've also taped out pathways and directions in the warehouse, especially for common walking paths like the pathways to the bathrooms. Some of the most heavily trafficked areas, we're trying to keep traffic down. And we've moved some of our actual workstations to space them out, make sure everybody is socially distanced. And then last, we've upped our cleaning services on our bathrooms and make sure that there's sanitary supplies there all the time, so that everybody can keep it clean. We've got about, 20 people coming to our office out of a 35-person team right now. And we've had very good luck so far. We're very grateful to not have had any COVID cases. We've done a couple things to particularly avoid that as well, besides those safety measures. One of the most useful things is that we've adopted doing rapid COVID tests, which we can do through a local company. They're just down the street. They charge $100, but it only takes a few hours to turn around a test. So we've had a couple cases where we've had a COVID scare. Somebody thought they had been exposed through a family member or friend. We were able to test them very rapidly and mitigate the situation quickly without creating any panic. We've also done that for people after they've traveled, to see family for a weekend. We've done that for new hires, and I think those have all come back negative. And it's given us a lot of confidence that things are okay and we're doing our best to stay safe. And then the last thing that we're doing, this is one of my personal favorite things, actually, it's been a big culture improvement, is that when we first had people coming back, we wanted to avoid having them, all leave for lunch and go out to restaurants and have to interact with somebody at the restaurant, wait there, pick up their food, and just expose themselves to a lot of potential risk. Same thing going to the grocery store in the evening to make sure they can make lunch for themselves. We figured that if we provided lunch every day, we would be dramatically reducing people's exposure to the outside world. So we set up a DoorDash account, and right now we basically have we choose 2 restaurants every day. We've got one of our employees managing that, set up a shared DoorDash order. Everybody gets a link. They can add their order easily, and we're getting lunch delivered every day. The company's paying it, which definitely adds a lot of expense. I think it's a couple $1,000s a month right now, but I think it's dramatically reduced everybody's exposure, and people absolutely love having free lunch. It's the new favorite thing. We created a socially distanced eating area outside, which has the also added cultural benefit of kind of getting everybody together at the same time and having some social time when they don't get that in their outside life quite as much. So it's been really great. Has probably drawn everybody closer together rather than further apart. And I think people are eating healthier. They're spending less time at lunch now because they don't have to go out, so they're working harder. There's lots of cool benefits that have come with that, and I obviously like that too.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm sure the cost of the lunches is actually less than the cost of losing employees for a time if they're out sick or something. So it all kind of works out.
For sure. Yeah, if we had a case, we'd probably have to shut down for a few days or a few weeks even, and that would be way more expensive.
Exactly. And you're supporting local businesses too. So double win.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Rusty. And kind of along those same lines, Nick, this next question is for you regarding installation site safety. So your installation services require team members going on site to a variety of business and consumer locations. How have you altered your service jobs to better accommodate the current health challenges?
Yeah, so this is actually a problem we've been trying to solve prior to COVID, and not because we don't want to interact with people, but typically our account managers that interact with our customers manage between 50 to 75 properties each, and there's just not a possibility of them getting around and seeing those people all the time. And so we have occupied notices, lots of things that we have to have signed, and a way for people to know when we're coming, the work that we're doing, and acknowledging that there's going to be someone on site that we can't always do in person. So we're actively trying to take some of the human element out of that anyways. We also have 45 people across 12 sales teams in the company that are actively in these sites, talking with property managers, going over their current needs, future needs, what we can do for them better. And so we've had to change a lot of that, obviously. Some of it is unavoidable. We, have to be there in front of people, but right now we're trying to go forward with trying to be as touch-free as possible. So when we're in an unoccupied unit, we try to have the property unlock everything and make sure that the unit's prepped and ready, the heat's turned on, everything, so that our guys can walk straight into the unit without having to see anyone, go get a set of keys. When there is an occupied unit, we try to get everything sent over ahead of time to get signed off on, and let the tenant know that someone's going to be there, and either, if it's a partial replacement, to stay out of the active area, or if it's a full replacement, to try to find a way to be out of the unit for the dedicated time that we're sending a crew over there. But it's tough. We have 200 crews that are on site every day doing between 250 and 300 jobs each day, and we try to get it as best we can. We hope that in the future, not for pandemics, but just in general, satisfaction for the customer, that we'll find a way to use Odoo and the customer portal to be able to interact with customers the way we need to, so that it's an interaction-free process, because not only is it health and safety, but it's also liability and other concerns that go into this as well. When you have people that are going into someone's home that's managed by another entity, and things happen and people need someone to resolve the issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we're all hoping there's not another pandemic as well. So we're with you on that.
Yeah, we recently opened a branch in Tampa, and this has created a struggle because we opened the doors about the day that everyone shut theirs. So, our sales teams aren't able to get out and see people the same way. They're having to find a warm way to cold call and talk to people over the phone so that they can start getting acquainted with customers and people in the area, and finding installers and things like that we typically do when we grow a branch.
Yeah, that's rough timing for sure. Thanks, Nick. Our next question is for Greg. We're seeing a textbook situation of demand exceeding supply. Can you generally explain how this has affected your business processes, and also discuss how this has affected costs and revenue for you?
Sure. What we saw was that, and the industry as a whole, is that people stayed home and they wanted to do home recording and play, and so demand demand went up, and we been, we've done a good job, but definitely struggled to keep up. We had that general, overall demand coupled with a new product release that challenged our manufacturing operation substantially. As far as price and cost goes, for our particular company, we have a strict no discounting policy. So we've pretty much got the consumers, trained that there's never a discount, ever, never. No Black Friday, no nothing. It's the price. If you want it, just buy it now. And we feel like our industry is very sensitive to, if we were to lower the price or raise the price, if we were to raise the price because our costs would go up, we would see a dramatic decrease in our sales. People would just wait to see if it's going to come back down. So, we've been able to basically just eat all of the cost increases and maintain maintain and increase the volume of sales without having to worry that we're going to scare people off with an increase. And it's not exactly COVID related, but probably the tariffs have been a bigger impact to us than anything COVID related. Well, the biggest thing we've seen has been increase in shipping costs. The international shipping and really all the air shipping has relied on essentially the passenger flights to as extra capacity, but now with the dramatic decrease in passenger flights, there isn't as much places to sort of sneak in their freight. So that's been the biggest issue. And then some of that also, I guess getting passed on through our suppliers.
And do consumers normally pay for their own shipping? So have they seen that increase in costs?
Yes, we're changing that, but until now, when we ship a product directly to a customer, they pay the shipping.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the ground shipping is increased much, but it's mostly been the air shipping. And then, for us, we will usually end up air shipping some of the first parts from China, just because we're kind of scrambling to meet the first production, and I know that's been more expensive. But yeah, our just the other thing that our pricing policy has allowed us to do is that the used prices are very close to like 90% of new, and then if we yeah, that's helped us kind of ride through that. People still will go for the new product as opposed to trying to save some money on a used one.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Greg.
Sure.
The next question is back to Nick. So this is a bittersweet time with demand going up, but time and resources being spread thin. What advice do you have for other business leaders to not only stay ahead of this wave, but to also see this new normal as a chance to change and bring greater value to their customers?
Yeah, so as far as managing resources, I mean, there's two sides for us to that, and one's the material side, making sure that we keep a good supply. We spent 30 years building a same day, next day service business. And so our customers expect us to be able to produce pretty much at a moment's notice. And then there's the people side that puts all of that together and makes sure that it works. And so for the last 10 years, as we've been in our growth phase, we've built kind of a centralized model where all of our purchasing and scheduling came out of Memphis. We directed that to the branches, and they just kind of executed on those things. And on the materials side, the end of the second quarter and third quarter is kind of a peak. We saw three things, and that was that we started to see demand outpacing the previous quarter. The second quarter was really down for us. We were on like a 20% growth rate in the first quarter. We probably went on a 15% down and then kind of leveled out in the third and started picking up back towards the growth. And so that moved very fast. We started seeing actual shortages and backlogs in manufacturing companies. As supplies got limited in the market, manufacturing processes were backlogged because the planners weren't able to kind of forecast the waves of 2020. And then we started seeing what kind of commonly happens during tariffs already is suppliers start blackouts on stock where they say that they're out and they back order product, but they're not, they're sitting on stuff they just don't want to release and run out of. And so we particularly had already kind of mitigated against this in prior years. I can't remember what it was, 2017, 2018, we saw a hurricane hit Houston and knocked out a lot of our chemical plants that provide all the dye and some other raw materials for carpet manufacturing. And so throughout that, we've done a lot of things to make sure that we're well diversified in manufacturing suppliers, domestic and abroad. We partner with our Chinese counterparts to make sure that they can create products that look a lot like our OEM products that we get from suppliers in the US. And so when something happens, we always have a backup. And that's kind of what has gone through and helped us in 2020 is that when other companies have seen shortages or dry runs, we've been able to lean back on our secondary supply system that has helped us keep things running. And similar to what I think Greg was saying earlier, the only problem we've really seen with that is tariffs have fluctuated back and forth on some of our products. And shipping costs have gone above and beyond this year. And now we're even seeing going into the fourth quarter that space is getting very limited on the container ships coming back to the US. So it's still running smooth as of right now, diversifying everything and making sure that we have multiple avenues to get the same product has helped tremendously. There's three main carpet manufacturers in the country that we work with. One of them we've used a reoccurring supply, so they know that we're going to order 6 trucks of carpet every month, and that's helped us keep their production running well, and no backlogs coming from them. And with the other two where we don't do that, we've seen a lot more back orders from smaller batch orders that aren't necessarily as common. But then there's the people too. And so this year is our first year going on Odoo. We went live in May. We have started to decentralize our processes and give our branches more control of their day-to-day activities. And with that, our strain on human capital has been very minimal. We've actually reduced our back office staff by about 50% and have been bridging gaps that we find with temporary staff workers where we can. And everything has actually been super smooth, and we feel like we're going to go into 2021 well positioned, better positioned than any of our competitors are.
Yeah, that sounds great, Nick. And it's unfortunate that Artisan had to go through the hurricane in order to, make these disaster preparation plans, but also very beneficial that it helped you in the case of this year with the coronavirus. So one takeaway that I'm hearing is to use this as an opportunity to prepare for disaster if you haven't already.
Yeah, and I mean, whether it's a pandemic or a hurricane or earthquake, tornado, whatever it is, I mean, we try to position ourselves as best we can for every disaster recovery that we can manage. I mean, obviously, if manufacturers completely wiped off, the face of the earth, we can't do much about that. But for the most part, we have recovery plans for everything from our technology to supply routes to even our people. So it's all hopefully planned well that we don't hit any major gaps in service and we can continue to serve our customers with next day and same day service.
That's awesome. Thank you. And our final question is for Rusty. Which industries do you see being in higher and lower demand right now?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, our business is probably a bit unusual. Every business is different in who they serve. So we serve the marine inspection space with an underwater remotely operated robotic vehicle. A lot of that is in the aquaculture industry, especially in Norway and Chile, where they grow salmon. It's also in R&D at a lot of different institutions and R&D departments within companies. But then also high school robotics competitions by a lot of our components and a lot of hobbyists buy our components. A lot of our sales go through overseas distributors, and about 70% of our overall business is outside of the U.S., which has been really valuable diversification during COVID. Obviously, we're in the U.S., but a lot of our overseas customers returned to work much sooner than people did here. And because of that, our demand came back relatively quickly. We're still not quite all the way back to 100%, but we're pretty close. We've seen continued demand from industrial customers. That sector bounced back pretty fast because a lot of the things they're doing are things that can't stop. Ports don't stop operating, food production doesn't stop operating. They need to keep going. Through our distributor network around the world, they were able to continue driving that demand, which has been very helpful for us. Where we've seen the biggest hit ourselves is in the schools and institutions and government organizations within the U.S. primarily, where all of these high school robotics competitions got canceled this summer and are slowed down or very different for next year. And institutions just aren't spending as much with hands-on hardware. So I think COVID in general probably has a lot of benefits for the robotics industry as a whole. There's going to be continued push towards automation and tools to get humans out of the loop and keep humans safe. So I think we can look forward to that. But in the short term, it's created a lot of fluctuation. But fortunately, things have recovered fairly well.
Yeah, that is a great point, actually. With robotics, people can stay safe and healthy, especially during this time. Thank you, Rusty. I want to thank our panelists again today for joining us. Rusty, Nick, and Greg, thank you so much. We appreciate your wisdom and advice, and I'm sure our guests did as well. Just a reminder to our attendees that the session has been recorded and will be available for playback. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.